Listen closely, children, for this is not just a story. It is a warning wrapped in the skin of a woman's ambition. In the green and golden kingdom of Abara, where the river sang at dawn and the mango trees gave shade to all who rested beneath them, there lived a king named Abara. He was a patient man, a just man, the kind of king who listened before he spoke and gave before he took. His people loved him the way dry earth loves the first rain. Beside him sat his queen Adiz, whose beauty was second only to her wisdom. Together they governed with one heart. Their kingdom was a place of drumming and laughter, of children who played until the moon chased them home. But in every good land, there is always a shadow waiting in the corner. In the market of Abara, there was a young woman named Mbik. She was clever in ways that made older women nervous. She watched the palace the way a hawk watches a nest. She had not been born into royalty, but in her heart, she had decided long ago that she deserved more than the life she was given. And when a woman like Mbik decides something in her heart, the whole world better pay attention. Mbik was not ugly and she was not foolish. These two things made her dangerous. She lived with her uncle, a dried fish seller named Obina, who loved her but could not control her. From a young age, Mbik had watched the king's procession pass through the market street. She had seen Queen Adiz riding on the royal palanquin, wrapped in silk and coral beads, waving to the people with a gentle hand. And each time, something sharp and hot had twisted inside Mbik's chest. Not admiration. Envy. Deep and burning envy. She began to ask questions that no common girl should ask. Who decides who becomes queen? Is it only blood? Is it only birth? Her uncle warned her to keep such thoughts to herself. Mbik smiled and nodded. But inside the fire only grew. Then one dry season, the king fell into a period of great sorrow. Queen Adiz had lost 2 children before they could walk, and the palace was heavy with grief. The king's face, once warm and open, became tired and distant. The kingdom felt this sadness like a change in weather. Mbik saw it too. And where others saw grief, she saw an opening. A gate left unguarded. A door left slightly open. She began her planning the way a river begins its journey. Quietly, patiently, one small step at a time, certain of where it was going. The first thing Mbik did was make herself useful. She offered to weave burial cloth for families in the palace who had lost loved ones. She worked quickly and beautifully, never asking for payment. Word of her kindness reached the palace gates. Then she began bringing food to the palace servants on festival days. Sweet fried akara and pepper soup that made grown men close their eyes in pleasure. The servants talked about her. Then the attendants talked about her. Then the queen herself heard the name Mbik spoken 3 times in 1 week. Adiz, being the kind woman she was, invited this generous girl for a visit. Mbik arrived dressed simply, eyes downcast, voice soft as harmattan wind. She bowed so low her forehead nearly touched the ground. She praised the queen's beauty, her grace, the way her wisdom had calmed the kingdom in the time of the royal babies' deaths. Adiz was moved. She did not know that every word Mbik spoke had been rehearsed at home. Standing in front of a clay pot filled with water used as a mirror, practiced until it sounded natural. The queen began to trust her. She gave Mbik small duties, then larger ones. Within 3 months, Mbik was inside the palace walls daily. She had achieved in weeks what others could not achieve in years. The spider had reached the center of the web. Now she only needed to wait for the fly. Deep in the forest beyond the eastern farms, past the 3 red clay hills where children were forbidden to play, there lived a man named Odo. People called him the Night Root. No one knew his full name. No one wanted to. He was a diviner who had turned away from the light long before Mbik was born. His compound smelled of burnt feathers and dry blood. His eyes were the color of old ash. People visited him only when ordinary medicine had failed and desperation had taken its place. Mbik went to him on a moonless night, alone, carrying a clay jar of fresh palm wine and a black hen under her arm. She told him everything. Her hunger. Her plan. The palace. The queen. The king's sorrow. Odo listened without blinking. When she finished, he circled her slowly, mumbling in a voice that seemed to come from beneath the earth. Then he stopped and looked at her with those ash-colored eyes. He said, "You want a throne. Not a man's love. Not peace. A throne." Mbik said, "Yes." Odo smiled. and it was not a pleasant sight. He told her the price. It was steep. She agreed without hesitation. That night, they sealed a pact with the hen's blood and the palm wine mixed together in a wooden bowl. Mbik walked home through the dark forest without fear. Something had changed inside her. Something soft had gone quiet forever. Odo gave Mbik two things. The first was a small vial of colorless liquid. He told her to add 3 drops to the queen's drinking water every 4 days. Not too much, not too fast. The queen would weaken slowly, the way a great tree weakens from termites inside its trunk, still standing, still looking strong, until the day it simply falls. The second thing was a ring carved from bone, painted black, marked with symbols only Odo understood. He told her to find a way to place it near the king's sleeping mat. The ring would cloud the king's mind, make him soft and confused, easy to lead. Mbik hid these 2 things in a small pouch sewn inside her wrapper. Back in the palace she was careful. She added the drops not all at once, but with the patience of someone who had waited her whole life for one moment. Queen Adiz began to feel tired in the 2nd week. She blamed the heat. In the 3rd week she stopped eating well. She blamed her grief. By the 4th week, the palace healers were called. They gave her herbs and prayers. But herbs cannot fight what Mbik had used, and prayers take time to be answered. The queen grew pale. Her hands trembled. And Mbik, sitting at her bedside fanning her with a wide leaf, wore the face of a heartbroken servant. Inside, she was counting the days. Queen Adiz died on a Tuesday morning when the sky was the color of old copper. She had called for her husband in the night, and held his hand until she could no longer hold anything. King Obiora's cry, they say, was heard 3 villages away. He wept and did not eat for 4 days. The kingdom went into full mourning. Black cloth was tied to the palace gates. Drums played the death song from dusk to dawn. The market closed. Children were pulled from the streets. Even the river seemed to flow more slowly that week, as though it too was grieving. Mbik wept loudly with everyone else, pressing her face into her hands in the courtyard. But behind her hands, she was not weeping. She was watching. During the chaos of the mourning period, she slipped into the king's chamber and placed Odo's bone ring beneath the mat where the king slept. It was done in less than a minute. No one saw her. By the 2nd week after the burial, King Obiora began to behave strangely. He forgot things. He repeated himself. He stared at walls. His elders whispered that grief had broken him. His advisors tried to guide him, but he waved them away like flies. He no longer held council meetings. He no longer settled disputes at the palace gate. The kingdom began to drift, and Mbik began to steer. With the queen gone and the king confused, Mbik moved quickly. She brought Odo into the palace, presenting him to the court as a powerful spiritual healer, sent to cleanse the palace of the curse that had killed the queen. Some elders objected. One elder named Okeke stood up in the court and said plainly, "We do not know this man. We do not know where he comes from. This is not the way of our people." By the following morning, Okeke was found dead in his hut. No wound. No sickness. Just gone. People were afraid. No one objected again. Odo took the position of chief diviner and moved into the palace shrine. From there he controlled what the king was told and what the king believed. Mbik whispered in the king's ear and the king nodded. She chose his foods. She dismissed his trusted guards and replaced them with men loyal only to her. She hosted the court. She issued punishments. She took the queen's coral beads and wore them around her neck without shame. The kingdom watched all of this with wide, frightened eyes. When word spread that she had ordered the execution of 2 traitors who had spoken against her in the market, the whispering stopped. Silence fell over Abara like a heavy cloth thrown over a fire. The flame was still burning underneath, but no one could see it anymore. Now Mbik sat on the throne, not as queen in name, not yet, but in practice, in power, in fear. She had the king sign a decree on a day when his mind was particularly clouded, declaring her his royal advisor with authority equal to the throne. The elders who remained in court said nothing. Their silence was the loudest sound in the palace. She ruled without mercy, exactly as she had always planned. Taxes doubled. Farmers gave up the best part of their harvests or faced punishment. Mothers hid their jewelry. Young men hid their anger. Odo walked the palace grounds at night, chanting, burning things, making sure the darkness stayed thick around the king's mind. Children who grew up dancing in the market streets now walked with their eyes on the ground, the way people walk when they are afraid of drawing attention to themselves. One night, an old woman named Noagnès, who had known the king since he was a boy, walked to the palace gate and spoke loudly enough for the guards to hear. She said, "What has become of this kingdom? What has become of our king?" She was removed from the gate. But her words traveled. They traveled to farms and to rivers and to a place far beyond Abara's borders, to where the king's eldest daughter, Princess Chisholm, had been sent years ago to study under the great council of female warriors. Princess Chisholm had grown into a woman who walked with the confidence of someone who had nothing to prove and everything to protect. She had trained for 6 years. She had learned strategy, combat, negotiation, and most importantly, she had learned how to read people, how to see past what they showed on the surface. The night after old Noagnès's message arrived through a trusted trader, Chisholm had a dream. Her mother appeared, still in her burial cloth, standing in the middle of the palace courtyard. She did not speak. She only pointed toward the throne room with a look of such sorrow that Chisholm woke up with tears already running down her face. She rode home in 2 days, pushing her horse harder than was kind, stopping only when she had to. As she approached Abara, she noticed the heaviness in the air. The fields too quiet. The people too still. A young boy recognized her and ran to her with wild eyes. He grabbed the edge of her riding cloth and whispered, "Princess, a bad woman and a bad man have taken everything from your father." Chisholm placed her hand gently on his head. Then she looked toward the palace with eyes like cold fire. She dismounted slowly and said to herself, "I have been trained for exactly this." She strapped her sword to her side, covered herself in plain travel cloth, and walked into Abara to begin, not with battle but with truth. Chisholm did not burst into the palace with fire. She moved like water, quietly finding every crack. In 3 days she had spoken to the frightened elders in secret, to the hidden loyalists among the guards, and to Noagnès herself, who gave her everything she needed to know. On the 4th morning, when Mbik sat at court holding a false hearing over a farmer accused of disrespect, Chisholm walked through the palace doors in full princess cloth, her mother's beads around her neck, the ones Mbik had not been able to find. The court went silent like someone had stopped a drum mid-beat. Mbik rose from the throne seat, her face hard. "Who gave you permission to enter?" Chisholm looked at her calmly and said, "My father's blood." At that word, something broke in the hall. The guards Chisholm had quietly spoken to moved first. They surrounded Odo before he could raise his staff. Without Odo's power covering him, the king blinked, looked around the room as though waking from a long sleep, and said his daughter's name. That one word undid everything Mbik had built. The court turned. Odo was seized. Mbik ran, but there was nowhere left to run. She was brought to the palace square. The king, slowly returning to himself, looked at the woman who had poisoned his wife, stolen his mind, and swallowed his kingdom whole. He did not shout. He simply said, "Let the people decide." And the people decided. That was the end of Mbik. That was the beginning of Abara's long, slow return to light.
If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, comment and subscribe for more stories.